I'm excited because I have 8, count fingers, 8 different ideas to help keep you warm while backpacking, whether it's the Pacific Crest Trail on a through hike or a section hike, or whether you're just looking to kind of extend your season a little earlier, a little bit later, making use of those shoulder seasons, because as we know, up in the high country, the season tends to be really short, and sometimes it's really long, late winter and spring, even early summer. As we're waiting and longing, you're kind of getting the itch and want to get up there. But to do so and stay warm, first for your survival, your safety, but also just for your comfort, your warmth, just to be able to enjoy your trip more. It can be a challenge sometimes, but thankfully the right gear with some, most importantly, knowledge can help with that. So before we get into the 8 ideas, the first thing I want to say is make sure, number one, before everything else, before whatever the gear is, practice, practice, practice. Spend time out there in the environment, hopefully in a safe way. Stay close to your car if you have no experience. Just go in a little bit of distance for the first little while. Work with the gear, especially if you're using new gear that's untested by you. Build your experience with your specific gear, build your experience with the environment. The more knowledge you gain for yourself, the better off you are. Also, most importantly, whatever gear you have, the more use you get out of your gear, the more it has to offer, the better you use it, it will be beneficial to you. But enough of that, let's get right into it. First, I'm going to right early on present an idea. Instead of saving it to the end, I'm going to early on present an idea I have that I'd be curious to hear your feedback about. But first, before that, one you have heard about, and I know is regularly talked about, is having a liner for inside of your sleeping bag or your quilt. A couple of positives. I know with thru hikers it's big, helps keep your bag clean. Obviously with down that's going to be an issue that would be a positive. But what my concern was, I started looking into a liner for my wife just to get a little bit more comfort. She was okay in her bag, but just to get a little more warmth and comfort as the temperature dipped a little bit lower going earlier and later in the season. Maybe especially if you're doing some longer trips early in the season or late in the season, you're concerned about snow or cold front moving in on you unexpectedly, that extra degree could be helpful. But I'm curious to hear from you if you've tried a liner as your solution. One is, what liner was it? 2 is, what did it weigh? And 3 is, about approximately how many degrees would you say from your personal experience it's gained you in warmth? 5 degrees, 10 degrees, were you able to get more than that? We had looked into the Thermalite, Thermoball, whatever, as a really warm one, and then I saw how much it weighed, and I was reading some reviews that said maybe it wasn't producing quite as many degrees of warmth as advertised, and obviously that may vary on the user. But for myself, it was enough to make me question, do I really want that much weight for that little warmth? Obviously, there's lighter liners. We've looked into silk and different ones. I'd be curious if, in your experience with those, a little bit lighter weight, but a little bit less warmth. So I understand that's an option. I'd be curious to know if you've been pleased with that as an option, if you've used it. But for ourselves, and for my wife specifically, I decided to go a different route. And so number 1 idea is a liner for inside your bag or quilt. Number 2, and this is one I'm really curious to get your feedback on, is consider other layers for warmth that may provide more warmth at less weight than a liner would. Now with that, nothing beats down, right? There's the whole argument in synthetic and down, and we'll save that for a future discussion. But for weight to warmth, down is your best bet. Now, it's the most expensive bet, but there's ways around that to some degree. Save that for a future video. But for my wife, what I decided, she already had a puffy, and I'm assuming you'll already have a puffy. Obviously, if you have a hood, you can use that. Hopefully, as we'll talk about later, you'll be using your layers built up. But for her, what I did is, since she already had a puffy, her puffy already had a hood. She, in colder weather, chooses her sleeping bag, which has a hood, and she had a beanie for inside of that, so 3 layers on her head already. I wasn't concerned about that, but I was still looking for a little more warmth for less weight, and this is what I came up with, is this here is the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer. It's obviously really well known for warmth to weight option. I myself have the jacket, I'll show you in a minute. But for her, I was able to find it as a vest, so no weight of arms, no weight of hood, which she already had her head covered. But this right here, it was slim enough to fit her body underneath her other puffy without her puffy compressing it down, so it still retained its warmth. And having this actually underneath another layer seemed to retain even more warmth than it does if you don't have another layer over it. So this has been a very effective layer for her. A lot of warmth for 4 ounces. Only 4 ounces, and this produced an immense amount of warmth on her core, which is where she needed it. And I was able to pick this up on a great deal for just $50. So I understand, you know, light comes at a price, down, especially good quality down, comes at a price, but there are ways around that, and I'll save that for your future video if you have the time to put into it. But this is a great option for her that we chose. Also to go with that vest. This one I still got a good deal on, but not as good because they're harder to find as far as used or whatnot. But this is the same one, Ghost Whisperer, but in pants. So she had found her legs were cold, all she had was a base layer on inside of her sleeping bag. But these, again, provide a lot of warmth on the lower portion of her body. And these together, both of these together, upper and lower, only weigh 12 ounces. So I would say that for the weight, it's providing a lot more warmth than I think she would have gotten from the liner we were looking at that would have weighed even more. So that's an option. For myself, I had chosen that as a puffy. I have a synthetic puffy, Patagonia, well-known puffy, but I wanted to go up it to down for a little bit more warmth and even less weight. And for myself then, if I need to and I'm not going long distances and concerned I might need the warmth, I'll just double up and take both of them and layer them. So layering again is key, we'll get back to. Another option, you'll notice this jacket here does not have a hood. That's because this is the one I got the deal on, $90 for this, and it was brand new with tags. So there are ways to get good gear that will keep you warm even in cold temperatures. I didn't need a hood, however, because my wife had already gotten me this. This is from Katabatic Gear. I sleep in a quilt, so I needed warmth for my head. So for Christmas, I think it was, she got me this. Incredibly warm, incredibly low weight. So this will be a lot warmer than just the hood of your puffy. Understanding, obviously, the puffy hood is multi-use, but still. Another option is just understanding your options. That's one of the main things, and I'm producing multiple ideas because you need to understand what options you have available, and then you can choose your own priority. Is weight a huge priority? Is warmth a big priority? How are you going to balance those things? Is cost a big priority? Or do you have time to invest to be able to maybe lower the cost down into your price range, but increase the quality of the gear that you have? So with that, an option I had, my wife actually made this beanie for me. Absolutely love this thing because it is so thin. It is so lightweight, but for its lightweight and thin material, has an incredible amount of warmth. She made it with an alpaca yarn, so alpaca is even more efficient than wool. I'm all for merino wool also, but it's even lighter and warmer, and I can layer it with this or with a hood, whatever I choose, but layering that. One other option I'll mention, remember, as far as considering weight with warmth ratio down being king, is socks. Whether you carry extra socks to sleep in, or maybe you have a backup pair of socks you could either sleep in or use for hiking, they weigh. Now, depending on how thick they are, these vary only by about a half an ounce. They could vary by as much as an ounce or two, depending on whether you have a thin hiking sock or you want a thick, warm sock to sleep in. But realizing that for the same weight or a little bit less, I can have down booties, and those down booties are going to provide a lot more warmth than these socks are. Now, some socks obviously are warmer than others, but again, you're picking your choice. Do you want the option of having a sock if you want to back up as a hiker, maybe in camp, whatever, wearing around? The down, if it's just the sock part, isn't usable outside of the tent. If you're going to do that, you need one that inserts inside of an outer liner, but again, that's more weight. So just being aware of what your options are. Now again, if down is for warmth to weight the best option, one of the best ways you can stay warmer is simply get a warmer sleeping bag or quilt. Now again, there can be the whole argument of, do you want the sleeping bag instead of a quilt for cold temperatures? I'd be curious to hear some of you who have done really cold temperatures in your quilt. How did it do? Were you able to manage the drafts? For myself, in the experience I've had, as I have converted 2 quilts from sleeping bags, and I do not want to look back. I have found the width of the quilt is hugely important if you want to minimize drafts, and then just kind of experimenting with it. But getting rid of the drafts is one thing, adding down is another. And this is the point as far as if you want to stay warm, extending your season, or if you're heading up into the mountains while it's still cold and snow everywhere, is if you get a bag that is rated to a lower temperature, say instead of a 20 or 30 degree bag, go 10 or even 0, you will be carrying a little bit more weight because they add more down. But the amount of weight added will be a lot less for the same degrees as some other options. So for instance, your liner that goes in your bag, if it weighs a pound, half a pound, maybe more depending, and you're trying to get 10 degrees, it's what, 3 or 4 ounces of down into your quilt or bag will gain 10 degrees. So going that route, you could literally double the warmth or triple the warmth, how much you gain for the same weight, or gain the same weight gain the same warmth for a lot less weight. So again, understanding the options, but increasing the warmth of whatever you're using for a sleeping bag or a quilt. Again, for those snowy sections, for the cold sections, for that cold time of year, for those high elevations. And then, hey, if you're going on other trips, having the option of a warmer weather quilt would be good to switch to, or sleeping bag, whatever your preference is. But being able to change gear can be helpful as well. If you're going really cold, layering the gear if you've got both. I've done that in the winter if I want to make sure I'm super warm. Our last trip, I knew it was going to be cold. We had feet of snow, and I didn't have a warm enough, and we'll get to it, warm enough sleeping pad, but I went ahead and added more under my sleeping pad, and then I also doubled quilts. My summer quilt underneath my shoulder season quilt, and I was plenty warm to get through the night. Now again, that's another thing you can do, is consider the sleeping pad. Can you get a warmer sleeping pad? Do you layer, if you have a sit pad or a lounge pad of some kind, underneath your inflatable sleeping pad to raise the R value? And I'm curious, I have heard that the Z-Lite is 2 R value. I'd be curious to know if there's any of you who have tested it specifically and maybe compared it with some other pads. Do you think that's the case? I used a folding pad, a cheaper one I just picked up locally, and I don't think it was anywhere near 2 R value. So it did help a little bit. Because I knew it wasn't going to add that much, I put a silver reflector emergency blanket underneath it, between it and the floor of the tent, which had snow under it. And that all helps, right? Small bits adding up. But it would probably prove lighter simply to take a warmer pad for that time of year or for those specific sections. So stepping up to something that has maybe a 6 or a 7 R value as a sleeping pad, and then you don't have to worry about the layers, because again, every layer is going to add a little bit of weight. And there's probably no way to get around. If you need more weight, more warmth, you're going to have more gear, you're going to have more weight. But again, understanding your options and choosing accordingly what works best for you. And I must reemphasize testing it yourself to be able to learn for yourself what works best for you. Okay, I mentioned earlier, layering of clothing is if you're pushing the edge, let's say you want to keep your weight down low because you're going to go further, you want to make it easier, say you're through hiking and that's imperative, going through somewhere like the Sierras or the Cascades, you're going to need to make use of everything that you do have. So layering your clothing system is imperative. Obviously, if you have night clothing instead of hiking clothing and you're concerned about wet versus dry, that would be an issue. Moisture wicking imperative. But being able to layer everything, and the one thing I'll add to that sometimes is overlooked is your rain jacket. If you've hiked in your rain jacket and you've understood the need for ventilation and sweated in spite of the ventilation, you realize the amount of air and warmth that those thin layers can hold in. Now, the concern with that also is breathability, right? Because during the night, if you have it outside of, say, your puffy or your vest, you don't want to hold up too much moisture. So careful choice in that may be appropriate, but I'd be curious to know, those of you who have done it with a rain jacket on the outside, how much do you think you gained in warmth from the rain jacket? And over time, either overnight or over this period of several nights, did you notice an effect on the layers that you had inside of your rain jacket? So one more option, all the layers. Okay, so number 5 was use every layer that you have. Number 6, now this is if you are someone who wears gaiters, these are the short little gaiters, maybe you wear Dirty Girl gaiters, these are actually a different brand, Go Long gaiters, but same idea. When I switched over to using trail runners, and we live right by the Pacific Crest Trail and we hike on it a lot, I found these little guys immensely useful for keeping the dust and the grit out of my trail runners. Very helpful. Won't go back from using these. Absolutely love them, wear them all the time. However, when it's snow, extending the season, while realizing in the mountains here that could be 10 months or more of the year, you have snow up there. I have these gaiters. These are my winter gaiters I got originally for snowshoeing, that kind of stuff out in the snow. But I have found immensely valuable if you're going to extend your season and go up into the high country early while the snow's still there. You may be doing some post-holing. These provide not only a lot more protection for your lower leg if you hit something while it's in the snow that you weren't expecting because you couldn't see it, but these ones here are Gore-Tex, but these will keep the moisture off your pant leg, out of your boot, and importantly will keep the snow from going down inside of your shoe and then melting and soaking your sock quickly. Now, of course, what I would like to know from any of you who have actually decided to go ahead and brave the snow with your smaller gaiters, how did they do for you? Were they able to help keep the snow out when you were post-holing? Or did they move a lot when you were post-holing? So this has the advantage, these ones with a fan around the top, they cinch down, and these stay in place no matter how much I'm post-holing. So now again, there's a weight difference, right? There's a penalty, a trade-off here. These weigh about 5 ounces more than these do. So I'd be curious to know if you've used these and they work. Maybe you let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll test them and see if I can cut 5 ounces of weight and use these. I haven't been willing to try that out in the backcountry because I didn't want to deal with the consequences if they didn't work. But let me know if I'm wrong. I would love to cut the 5 ounces. Let me know what you think. The other thing being along this line of thinking with wet socks is I have converted trail runners, absolutely love them, but in winter when I backpack, I use my winter boots. Now, I'd be curious to know from you, especially I'm thinking of you who have gone through hiking, so you're covering distance, so you just keep your trail runner. Not only did the gaiter help, the Dirty Girl gaiter or whatever small gaiter you have, what have you done for your feet? Have they stayed soaking wet? I've heard of the seal skins, I haven't tried any. Those of you who have used the seal skins to keep your foot at least waterproof, how did that do? How cold were your feet? How wet were your feet? What were your socks like trading in and out, etc.? Give us your experience in the comments below. But I would really recommend, especially if you are just beginning to extend your season into the snow, you're just trying to go a short distance as you're beginning to learn, start with something that's warm for your feet and do everything you can to protect them. So anyway, so there's the rundown. Oh, here's one more. Ready? You stayed this long, if you've stayed this long. Number 8, it's probably not a new revelation, but a backup that I always have on hand, I originally had for my wife just to stay warm and comfortable while she was camping, is hand warmers. These right here, this pack is a 2-pack of hand warmers designed just to kind of put in the pockets and keep your hand warm. They have small ones for socks that have a sticky thing on them to stick them onto your socks, or you can throw them down into the foot of your quilt or your bag. But as nice as these are to keep your hands or feet warm, what I have found is a total game changer are the body warmers. They now make body warmers that have the same sticky stuff on them that the sock ones do that actually stick. And these ones are great, but this one I found 18 hours it lasts. So when I first convinced my wife to try winter camping with me, this was a game changer. You take this, you peel off, you get between whatever mid layer you have in your base layer. Again, don't put this next to your skin. Stick it to your base layer, put it in between your 2 layers, and this will radiate heat. And because they last so long, you can put it on as soon as you change clothes in camp if you change. Put this on in the evening right away. Stay warm in camp while you're fixing dinner, before bed, those long hours in your quilt or sleeping bag. And the next morning when you're done to hit the trail, it will still be producing heat for you. So the bigger, the longer lasting, the more they weigh. And you may not want to haul one for every night, but a couple of these in there just as a backup in case it gets colder than expected are invaluable on the trail if you end up needing them. If, like me, you pack 5 or 6 of them and end up never using them, you will regret it. So again, choose your priorities carefully. But hopefully some of these thoughts help you. Hopefully it helps you to extend your time in the snow. Hopefully it helps you to stay warmer, more comfortable, and just find it all around more enjoyable while you're out in those beautiful mountains. Thanks for coming along. Share in the comments below the experiences you've had, or if you take some of these and decide to put them into practice, come back and give us comments. What did you find out? Have a great trip.